Hello everyone, my name is Shonda and welcome to my channel, Under the Needle Quilting and Crafts. So my local Dollar Tree does not have crochet items, and I'm quite grateful that they don't. So they have no crochet hooks, they have no yarn, they have none of these things. And like I said, I'm extremely grateful for that because it keeps me from going in there and buying things that I don't need, because I already have all the yarn that I need. I already have all the crochet hooks that I need, and there's just no need for me to go in there and buy these things that I already have. But at, a tempting price of $1.25, it can kind of overwhelm your sensibilities and you buy things that you don't need to buy just because it's so dang cheap. Well, I happened to be outside of my local area and there was a large Dollar Tree right next to the Staples that I was going to, because I had to do an Amazon return. So of course I had to go into the Dollar Tree and see what they had. And lo and behold, they had hooks and yarn. And I wanted to try it. I've heard lots of things, good and bad, but I've never actually tried it myself. So I picked up some hooks. I've got these, they come in sets of 2. So this is 4 and 4.5. We've got 5 and 5.5. And we have 6 and 6.5. And they had a bunch of different yarns. They didn't have a large selection. A lot of it was sold out. But they did have just some regular worsted weight yarn. The Premier just worsted for $1.25. So I got a skein of pink and a skein of gray. They also had a couple of different types of chenille yarns. And then they had another kind of specialty yarn, which I really wasn't interested in. So I just want to try these Dollar Tree hooks and this Dollar Tree yarn and see what I think. Now, Premier is a well-known yarn brand. I have Premier yarn. I don't have this particular one. I have the Premier anti-pilling worsted weight yarn, and this does feel a little different than that yarn, which I would expect it would. Because this is not anti-pilling. This is made in Turkey, however, so I guess that could be a good thing, depending on what you think about yarn manufacturing, right? I really don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. As long as the yarn feels good, works up well, I really don't care where it came from. That's just my personal opinion. Now, these hooks, I'm a little dubious about the hooks because I've never used a plastic hook like this before. The only plastic hooks that I've ever used are the Crochet Amour plastic hooks, and they start at a size 6.5. So they don't even have these plastic hooks for the smaller sizes. If they do, I'm not aware of it. So I don't believe they do. So they have the metal hooks for the smaller sizes, and then for sizes 6.5 and up, you can get the plastic hooks. I have tried these. I love these. I have 2 sets of these because I like them so much. Then they also have Prym, P-R-Y-M. That's a plastic hook, but it has an ergonomic handle. I don't have one of those to show you because I did not like using them. I did not like using plastic hooks whatsoever. So that is a personal bias of mine. Okay, a personal bias of mine is that I don't like plastic hooks. Not for me. I don't like the way that they glide, and it seems like they have more tension on the fabric, so the fabric doesn't glide as easily, which actually could be good for a newer crocheter that's just learning. It might be good to have a little bit more tension on that yarn. I don't know if that's how these hooks are going to be, but that's how that Prym hook was for me. Now the Clover ones are fashioned in such a way that I don't have that issue with the gliding. These glide just as smoothly as the metal hooks. I don't know how they construct these things to do that, but to me, these are comparable to the Clover metal hooks. Now, sometimes there could be a little bit of drag, but that's just the nature of plastic, right? But I'm very happy with these Clover hooks. I did not like the Prym hooks. The Prym hooks also squeaked a little bit. There was like some squeaking when the yarn would slide against the hook. So I don't know how this is going to work out. I'm going to try it. We'll start with the gray. The recommended hook size is a 5 millimeter. So I Do I have a metal 5mm hook? Because if the plastic, I kind of want to compare the plastic to the metal. So let's see if I've got a 5mm hook over here. That's a 5.5. So I do have a 5mm hook. This isn't even a name brand hook because the Clover 5mm hook, which mine is not over here right now, has a blue handle. So this is not a Clover. This was a generic Amazon crochet hook set. Generic. I got these some years ago, maybe 5 years ago. They're no longer available. I wish they were, because to me, this was pretty daggone comparable to the Clovers as far as how smooth they were. I was really happy with these hooks. And I bought these hooks when I wasn't super into crochet. I've been crocheting for a long time. I learned over 20 years ago. I taught myself over 20 years ago. But at the time when I bought the hooks, I wasn't crocheting every day or even every week. I just happened to be on Amazon. I knew I needed a set of hooks because I didn't have one. I didn't have one because I gave my set to my daughter. I had a daughter who had gotten into crochet, so I gave her my hooks, and then I went online and I got me another set. It was going to be $10 or $12 for a set, and they were great. And when I got back into crochet heavily about a year ago, I went back to buy those same hooks, and they were no longer available. And the newer hooks that they had that were out there, to me, were not as good as the old set that I bought, right? Such is life. But let's try these out. I'm going to switch my camera here. And let's try to crochet with this. So we're going to get the 5mm hook. I do like that the hooks have, see if I can get it to come into focus. I don't think I can. With my crappy camera, I don't think I can. But it does say 5mm on there, which is good, because there are hooks that don't even tell you the size on the hook, which is egregious to me. It is absolutely egregious to me to not have the size of the hook on the hook itself, but it happens. All right, so let's get this yarn open. People have different ways of how they find their yarn ends. I usually look to see if there's one tucked in, right? Because if there's one tucked in, okay, that's going to be your outside strand. And so if your outside strand is tucked into here, then normally I want to pull from the inside, and I find that on the opposite side. So I just kind of tinker around in there, loosen things up a little bit. Some people will take the label off and smack it. They'll spank it. They call it spanking the yarn. I don't normally do all that. I normally just molest the yarn from both sides until it loosens up in there a little bit, and then I can pull out my yarn barf. It's not much yarn barf here. That's what we call that ball of yarn that comes out when you find your inside pull. So let's try this out, shall we? We're going to put a slip knot on the hook. Did you hear that? Did you hear that squeaking? Hold on. I don't know if you could hear it. Like, hold on. I got to try it again while It's the squeaking, man. The squeaking gets me. Hold on. You can't. No, it won't do it again. Okay. And I can hear it. So as I'm tightening the yarn, you probably can't hear it, but as I'm tightening the yarn on the hook, I can hear the squeak. I can feel the vibration in the hook. It's crazy. You're never going to be able to hear that, but let's try to crochet, shall we? So we're just going to start with a chain. And there's definitely drag. And And I don't care that it's a straight hook. I learned on straight hooks. They were metal, but I learned on hooks that did not have ergonomic handles. I learned on hooks just like this, but were metal. And you notice I'm having trouble gripping the yarn, but that's just me. Every hook is a little bit different. And so when you use a different hook, you kind of have to learn exactly how to, flip and get your yarn over. Like this is a little learning curve sometimes with every hook set. They're just constructed a little bit different. And so your technique is a tiny bit different. It's actually imperceptible once you get to crocheting. It's just one of those things. So let's do half double crochets into the second chain from the hook. Trying to look at my screen to make sure this is in focus. Oh. Oh, I hate it. Oh, I hate it so much. But that's also because I'm used to metal hooks. I think that if you are, like, who is this for? Who is this for, really? I feel like this yarn is multi-purpose. I feel like this yarn is really for anyone. I don't have a problem with the yarn. The yarn isn't even splitting. The yarn is staying intact. The yarn is fine. I don't like the hook. Now, I think that if you've never crocheted before and you're learning, your technique is completely different, right? Because you're kind of going slowly. You're probably watching a video and, you're just kind of, you're going slowly, and that drag actually might help you to have a little bit more control over your project. So for me, these hooks might be fine for somebody who is learning, right? If you are learning and you've never crocheted before, this plastic hook might be good for you because it kind of forces you to slow down. It's just slower, right? Because there's just a little bit more drag on the hook or on the yarn, whichever way you want to say it. It's just not quite as smooth. Now for me, that first, crocheting into the chain for me is always a bit slow. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to reserve judgment until I get to my next, until I get to the next row. I think I did way too many chains. I didn't need to make a swatch this big, but I was honestly just really curious about the yarn. And I honestly like the yarn. But to be honest, this is Premier yarn, and Premier makes good yarn. And there was just no reason for me to believe that Premier would source some super cheap yarn, like substantially less in quality than their normal yarn, just to sell it to the Dollar Tree. Because honestly, this yarn isn't very much different in price. It's actually kind of more expensive than buying. I should have priced out a skein of Premier worsted weight yarn. Maybe I'll have to do that. But I did price out Red Heart Super Saver. I was expecting this to be like Red Heart Super Saver, but to me, it's honestly maybe a little bit better. I haven't used regular Super Saver in a while, so it's hard for me to be sure. But the last Red Heart Super Saver I used was the all-in-one granny square yarn. And to me, this yarn is softer than that Red Heart, right? So that would be this. This is the last Red Heart yarn that I used. And this was a swatch that I worked up. And to me, this yarn is softer and squishier than this Red Heart yarn. I have not used regular Super Saver in quite some time though, so maybe there are differences in the regular Super Saver and the all-in-one granny square Super Saver. I don't know, but to me this is softer, and that makes sense because Premier to me is softer and squishier than Red Heart is. So right, let's move on to row 2. Row 2 tends to be a little bit easier. It's always a bit fiddly when you're working into the chain. So let's try here. Let's see what we got. So we're going to chain 1. We're going to turn. And I'm going to half double crochet into the first chain. The first stitch. Some people do a chain 2 and half double crochet into the next, whatever you feel, whatever works for you, whatever you like the look of. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay. Yeah. All right. All right. Okay. There still is a little bit more drag, but it's really not a big deal. Working into the chain was a bit fiddly, but I think that's always the case. Working this second row, I think the hooks are fine for a newbie. I'll tell you who I recommend this for. Hold on. I just want to try my super cheap, not even a real clover, 5mm hook before I say who this is for, who I think this is for. Okay, let's try the metal. Okay. Okay. I do find it a little easier for me to control my tension with the metal hook, but that might just be a me thing, right? That might be a me problem because I'm used to metal and I'm also used to using an ergonomic hook. So it might be that just for me, it's easier for me to control my tension with the metal hook. I really can't say, but I find that when I'm using the plastic hook, that my stitches tend to be a little looser. It's harder for me to get them tight, just naturally flowing. Now I want to bring in some other hooks just for my own personal edification, just for my own personal sense here. What else do we have? What do we have? We've got a expensive hook here. So here we have like a $1 hook, $1 metal hook, and then maybe a $2 metal hook. And now here we've got a much more expensive hook. Okay. And every time you change hooks, for those first couple of stitches, you kind of just got to get used to the hook, right? Because even just between these two hooks, which I like, which I've used, which I love, there's just a small difference between, maybe how I have to grab the yarn and things like that. And that's just normal. Now I want to go back to this plastic hook. Yeah, I think once you get used to it, it's fine. It does have a little bit more drag. It definitely does. But I think that's just the nature of plastic. It's just going to be harder to get plastic smooth than it is to get metal smooth, right? So I think that's just, and something is just going to glide better against metal than it will against plastic. I think that's just physics, nature, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, Because even this has some drag. Okay. All right. I've had enough. Not I've had enough. Like I've tested it enough. So let's just go back. Let's go back up here. Okay. This yarn is fantastic to me, right? And I'm a cheap yarn user, okay? I use cheap yarn. I am a cheap yarn user. I love me some cheap yarn, okay? Do I have some expensive yarn? Yeah, I do, but not much of it. I have a lot of yarn. Not a lot of it is expensive. Some of it, most of the yarn that I have retails for $13 and under. But on sale, so like, yeah, a Karen cake might retail for $12.99. But if you wait for a sale at Michael's and get them 30 or 40% off, then they're only $7, $8, $9. Right? If you wait for a sale at Premier, you can get a skein of Premier anti-pilling yarn for like $2.99. If you I have a lot of Lion Brand Hue and Me yarn that I got for $2.99, maybe $3.49 at the highest. So it's a little bit different now because Joann's is out of business, right? Joann's is no more. And if you hopped on the right sale at Joann, you could get some cheap yarn, which is probably one of the reasons why they're not in business. That and also private equity, because private equity is a cancer on the society. But that being said, maybe the sales were a little too cheap. Maybe they were a little too low, right? Because the Hue and Me Lion Brand Hue and Me yarn, I think it sells for like $6.99. So when I'm getting it for less than 50% off, now that's not year round, but I hopped on like 2 sales of that yarn where I got it for $2.99 one time, and I think the second time I got it for like $3.29. I've gotten Woolies Thick and Quick on sale for like $4 a skein. That stuff is $8. So most of the yarn in my collection I got for less than $5 a skein, at least like your normal skeins. Then there's some Red Heart Jumbos that I got for like $6 a skein, but there's like 700 yards in there, right? So yarn prices are all over. I think that this is good quality yarn. I like this yarn. I wish it came in a bigger skein, right? Because at 109 yards, you're not going very far with this. So this is 109 yards, 100% acrylic, 50 grams. This isn't going to go very far. I don't even think you can get a hat out of this. Maybe you can. I don't think so. And these yarns do have a dye lot. So if the colors vary a lot and you can only get it from Dollar Tree, you need a lot of skeins to make anything of reasonable size. Now, if you don't care about dye lot means that like these are dyed together. So they'll get a bunch of skeins, they'll get a bunch of yarn, they'll dye it all at the same time. And then that's it. And the next time they dye that same color, the shade might be a little bit off. Now, sometimes that doesn't matter. For me, I normally don't care about dye lot that much because I find that it doesn't show. But if you're doing a single color blanket, which I normally don't do, I don't normally do single color blankets. But if you're doing a single color blanket that's all in a single color, so you're not using a variegated yarn or a self-striping yarn, you're just doing your entire blanket in one single color. To me, that is when dye lot becomes the most important. And it would be kind of rough to get enough skeins to do a whole blanket from the Dollar Tree. But if you're mixing yarns or you're mixing colors, I think that would be fine. This is comparable in price to Red Heart Super Saver. Red Heart Super Saver is a little bit cheaper. Because if you were to buy 3 skeins of these, that would be $3.75. And I believe at Walmart right now, Red Heart Super Saver is $3.77. You do get a little bit more yarn in the Red Heart Super Saver. So you would get, 3 of these would be 327 yards. Whereas your Red Heart Super Saver is like 370 yards for the same price. But I think this is a softer yarn. But at the same time, once you wash that Red Heart blanket, it's gonna soften up. Once you wash it, put some, what do you call that, fabric softener in there. Sorry, I'm looking because I have a frog friend today. Once you do that, then it softens up quite nicely, and it's fine for anything. I think I'm not a Red Heart hater. I love Red Heart. If it wasn't for Red Heart, I never would have learned to crochet because everything else was too expensive. Once I learned and I got into it, I switched to Karen Simply Soft. It was a couple cents cheaper and it was softer, right? But I like cheap yarn. So I think this yarn is for anyone. The yarn is for anyone. To me, the hooks are only for a person that has never crocheted before and doesn't know if they're going to like it or want to keep doing it. And they don't have a lot of money, or they're exceptionally frugal and they don't want to spend $9 or $10 on a set, right? Because this was $3.75 to get 6 hooks, right? So for $8, you can get a set of boy hooks, right? I think they're like $8, $8 or $10. You can get a set of boy or Susan Bates, right? So it's going to cost you a little bit more money. So an extra $5. You would need an extra $5 to get a decent set of metal hooks. Or you can even go on Amazon and get a set of metal hooks. But to me, I would go with the boy or the Susan Bates crochet hooks. Just because the metal is going to be smooth. Even though they're not ergonomic, they don't have the ergonomic handles. They're built just like this, but the metal is guaranteed to be smooth and glide through your project nicely. Like, do I have... All right, I think this is a 6mm Susan Bates hook that was given to me after my grandmother passed on my dad's side. She's the only person that only on my dad's side did I know people who crocheted, but they did it when I was a child before, and they were all long gone by the time I ever picked up a crochet hook. They were all dead and in the ground. No, I take that back. I had a great grandmother that still was alive, but she was way too old to be crocheting still. So yeah, you've got some options here. I think the yarn is fine, but I can only recommend the hooks for someone that just wants to get one, right? So like if you really just want to try crochet and have the lowest barrier to entry possible, you really don't want to spend any money, but you kind of just want to jump on this bandwagon and try this out. You're not particularly crafty. You've never done anything crafty. You have no idea if you're going to like this or not. You don't want to invest any money whatsoever. Then get you this set here that has the 5 and the 5.5, and get you one skein of yarn. And for $2.50, you can try crochet. That is the lowest barrier to entry to crochet that I've ever seen. And that is the only person that I would recommend this for. And once you've tried this and you've worked up this skein and you're like, I'm getting the hang of this. I kind of like this. I might want to continue with this. If you get to that place, you can still continue to buy this yarn, but then I would recommend you go over to Walmart or some other craft store, wherever you buy your crafts, and get you a set of either boy or Susan Bates hooks, or go online and get you a set of ergonomic hooks. I can't say go get a set of Clover Amours unless you've got the bread, right? Because the cheapest you're going to get them is on Amazon for, I believe, $45 to $50 now. There was a point where you could get a set for $38. That was about 6 months ago. But I think the cheapest I've seen them now is like $48. I think the last time I looked, there was about $48 for a set. If you know that you're going to like crochet, then I recommend just getting that set. If you saying, hey, this is going to be something I want to do, long term, then go ahead and get you a set of those. And if that price point is too high, there's a lot of cheap sets on Amazon that have ergonomic hooks, just like this cheap set here, that are not the Clover Amours, and that you can get for about $10 or $12. And if you spend $15 or $20, you can get a whole set of them. But I will say the larger the hook size is, to me, the worse they are. And I'm wondering if that's why Clover does not make metal hooks in large sizes. The biggest metal hook they make is a 6.5 millimeter. And I'm thinking it's because even they recognize that once you get to 7, 8, 10, 12 millimeters, that 15 millimeters, that having that in metal to get that smooth starts to cost more. And then the weight of the hooks starts to grow as well. So I wonder if that's why Clover does not make large hooks in metal. But again, if you've never tried crochet and you want to give it a try, you want to see what's up, you want to jump on the virality, because it seems like crochet goes viral every couple of years, and you just, like I said, you want the lowest barrier to entry possible, then grab a skein of this yarn. It recommends a 5 millimeter hook. I would recommend a 5 millimeter hook. And get you this and this for $2.50 and try your hand at crochet. But once you tried your hand, I can still recommend the yarn. It's good yarn. You're going to have to keep changing it because you only get 109 yards per skein. So you're going to be constantly having to add a new skein, which would be annoying, but the yarn is decent. I would still recommend going to get yarn somewhere else. Go into Premier's website on a sale, get some yarn. Go to Hobby Lobby, get some yarn. Go to Walmart, get some yarn. Go to Michael's, get some yarn. Wait for the sales. For Michael's, I recommend shopping online and picking up in store, because in store they almost never have a coupon in there. It's like they're trying to phase out stores. In my personal opinion, they're trying to phase out stores, because if you're offering 30% off when I buy online, but when I go in your store, there's no percentage off, then you're sending me a message, aren't you? You're saying something without saying it. So for Michael's, go in the store, look at the yarn, touch it, then buy it online with your phone, go sit in your car and wait for them to tell you to come pick it up. In my store, it's usually less than an hour. Go get you some Chick-fil-A or go walk around the Kohl's while you wait for your Michael's order to be ready and then pick it up. Get that sale, girl. So yeah, that is my first impression of Dollar Tree hooks and Dollar Tree yarn. You know what else these hooks could be for? If you just are constantly losing your hooks when you go out. Like every time you take your project on the go, you end up losing your hook. Well, then get these. Because for 62 cents a hook, if you lose it for 62 cents, it's not a huge thing. But even for, one of these, you're going to pay $2 for. So maybe I could recommend it for that. I don't know. These would be good for kids. If you're teaching kids how to crochet, I think this could be a good way to start. To get them started. I think this could be great for children. Teaching kids or teenagers how to crochet. You don't want to spend a lot of money. You don't want them using your stuff. You want them to have their own. Because kids, when you start letting them touch your stuff. But yeah, I believe that there's a place for this. I don't hate these hooks. I don't hate this yarn. I take that back. I actually like this yarn. I can't say I like these hooks. I can say I don't hate these hooks. But to me, they were not frustrating to use, right? I've tried other hooks that, like, maybe it came in a kit or something. And And it's just the hook itself is frustrating. It's like, I don't like this. So I can't say that about these. I can't say that about these. These were not annoying. No, I didn't try the smaller sizes. It could be that when you're trying the smaller size or the large size, maybe things will be different. But for me, just trying a 5mm hook with the yarn that's available at Dollar Tree, it's fine. It's fine. The yarn is good. The yarn is good. The yarn did not split. It's a good quality yarn, which I would expect from Premier anyway. And the hooks are usable, which was more than I expected, honestly. I expected these to be hot ass garbage, and they're not. They're absolutely not. I prefer an ergonomic handle. That is a personal preference. I did not look to see if they had other ergonomic hooks, right? Maybe they do. I just saw these and I bought the 3 different sizes and kept it moving. They might have had more in there, but honestly, I was trying to get out of there. Because, the Dollar Tree can really suck you in. So anyway, guys, those are my honest first impressions of these Dollar Tree. They're called Crafters Square. So that is my honest impression of these Dollar Tree Crafters Square plastic crochet hooks, 2 for $1.25. And these, like if I was going, like my fiance, he likes to go fishing, and maybe if we're going fishing, I don't want to bring my good hooks and my good yarn, but I want something to keep my hands busy while I watch him fish. Well, in comes the Dollar Tree yarn and hooks. If I'm going someplace where I can't bring metal, maybe I'm going to a football game or boring ass baseball game. I love football, baseball, not so much. Maybe I'm going to some game that I don't want to watch, but I want to be able to bring my crochet, and I know they're not going to let me bring anything metal into the facility. Well, to the rescue, my Dollar Tree crochet hooks and my Dollar Tree yarn. There's a place for this. There's a place for this. I didn't intend for this video to be 40 daggone minutes, but here we are. But I like the yarn a lot, and the hooks are perfectly fine. Am I going to use them? Absolutely not. No. I like my metal hooks. I like the ergonomic hooks. That is just my personal preference. I just like a larger hook. It's just easier for me to use. Personal preference. But if you're a newbie and you want a low barrier to entry to try these suckers out, go on over to your local Dollar Tree and see if they got some. But anyway, guys, that is it for me. If you like this video, feel free to hit the like button, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one.